Hi, hello everyone. I'm a tutor of Uplatz. This is ReactJS session part 7. To know more about us, please use this website address which I have given in my presentation. Let's see the agenda for today's class session. So today we are going to discuss about user interaction and what are the interaction which we have left out in our previous session, and what are the input events, controlled and non-controlled elements, what is the styles and some of the styling libraries. So let's see one by one. So what is basically user interaction, which is nothing but the user creating an event using onClick. So it's quite bit all throughout our apps, so but it is a good idea. So in our activity, so we have a search icon that we have hooked up to show a search box. So the interaction we want to show is like a search input field whenever the user click on that particular search icon. So just recall the header component that is implemented. So you can just see here, class header extends React component. So now I have a render and return for that particular render method div class name header. So inside that particular div class name, I have a menu icon and I have dashboard, dash button and circle for those particular return methods. So these are the div. So next would be like for that I have a title which is inside a span tag. So for the title, I'm just passing through props. It's called as this dot props dot title, which means this particular will receive a title from the child component. So again, input with the search class name is search, and I have a placeholder, which means in that particular input field you will have a text as search, and as you have icon as fa search icon. So next, I'm just closing that. So we can pass a dynamic class name prop to that particular input element. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just having a class header extends the particular React component. So in that render method, so these are the things which you will add it from the previous. So let's search input classes. I'm just passing a dynamic class name, a search input. So I'm just returning class name, header, and other div menu icon, dashboard, and div, etc. So next div class name dash bottom. So and I have a circle. So inside the div, I have enclosed all the other tags. So of which is by my render method. So inside that span tag, I have a class name title. So this dot props dot title inside the span tag which I have written, and that in my particular input I have a text type text. So class name would be search input classes dot join, which means I whatever the text which needs to be typed in that particular box, it will get appended to that particular text field. So that is what it actually means. And then I have an icon which I have already explained you. So now what we are going to do is, whenever the user clicks on that particular class name or element, we want to update the state of the component. So which is called as which is called which we search input class objects will automatically update it. Otherwise we can use an onClick handler. So that is pretty simple. So now let's make this component stateful. If it needs to track the input field should be showing or not. So we can convert our component to be stateful using that constructor function. So I have a class header extend React component. So my constructor would be props and I have a super props. So why if I create constructor, I will create, sorry, this dot state, which is like searchable, visible, false, I have mentioned. So constructor means what is this particular constructor function is all about. So in JavaScript, constructor function is run when the object is created. It runs a reference to the object function that created the instance prototype. So whenever the function is the in a proper English, how can I say, like constructor function is a function that runs when JavaScript runtime creates an object. That is all about the constructor mean. So it will create, it will run only when the JavaScript during its runtime create object automatically initiated. So that is what mainly constructor means. So this constructor method is set up instance variable on object as it runs when the particular object gets created. So when using ES6 syntax to create object, we have to call a super method before any other method. So calling that super function will always call the particular parent class constructor function as well as. So we have already studied in C programming or OOPS concept. So the super keyword is will be the first line because it will inherit the parent class, which means what is meant by inherit? It will be getting deriving all the methods of our parent class. So that is the main thing of that super. So we will call it with same argument as a constructor function of a class is called. So when the user clicks on the button, we will want to update the state to say the searchable, search visible flags is get updated automatically. So whenever clicks we need to update that. So we will want the user able to close or hide the input field after clicking on the particular search icon for second time. So it will toggle the state rather than setting it true. So that is what main concept of that. So choose or hide the input field after the search icon for the second time, which means a toggling rather than it is set it true. That is what we have made search visible to a false. So, so now let's create this method to bind our click event. So class header extends React component. So show search this dot set state. So here the search visible, this dot search visible, which means I'm not making that search visible to true. So now we can add if a statement to update a search input classes, or else if a state dot search visible is true. So this is one, like if you want to bind that event. Otherwise, I have a class extends react dot component. I need to update the class array if the state is visible. So for that, what I'm going to do, if this dot state search visible. So this is the search input class. When the user clicks, this will get triggered. So in that particular class, I'm just making that state to visible, which means I'm just pushing active inside that particular class. Finally, we can attach a click handler using onClick prop on icon to call our new show search method. So the entire updated source of the header component now will be, this is how I looks like this. So here I have created a method to bind our click event inside the set state. I have made that in the show search. I have updated my state to false. So if you want a class array, if the state is visible means I will make that active with the help of I'm just pushing inside that. So class header extends React component. I have a constructor. Overall, I'm just clubbing everything and writing. So I'm just making a search visible false. If a toggle visibility on the run state means what I need to do, I need to change the state of the search visible. I have initially made as false. Now here it will make as true. So not equal this dot set state search visible. After that, inside that I'm rendering everything which is like need to class. I need to add an input. I need to update array if my search state is visible. So if it is visible means I need to push everything inside that, which is like header, menu icon, dash, top, bottom, circle, everything I need to push inside search input class. So that is what I have done. So after that I need to give the title. So this is the whatever I am typing inside this text field, it will get up and to that particular text field, and adding on click handler to call the show search button. So div this dot show search dot bind dot this. If I click on the text field, that particular uh, handle will get triggered, and based on that set state will get update. If it is visible means it will added all the classes into our web page. So if not means it will make everything false, and it will not uh, make the search input classes to get join in that particular scenario. So this is how uh, our user interaction for our first example. So you can try clicking on that particular search icon and watch the input field appear and disappear. So that will be animation effect. The rest of things you need to do with the CSS animation. So what are the input events we have? So whenever we build a form in React, we will use the input events offered by React. So most notably, we will use onSubmit and onChange prop most often. So let's update our search box demo to capture the text inside the search field when it updates. So whenever an input text has onChange prop set, it will call the function every time the field changes. So with that will do drastically every time. Most probably we will use on submit and on change often. And also we will update our search box demo to capture the text inside that search field when it get updates. So this input field has on change option, as well as it will call the function every time the field get changed. These are the things needs to be get noted when we are using input events. So when we click on it and start typing, the function will got called automatically. Using this prop, we can capture the value of a field in our state rather than updating our header component. Just you can create a new child component, and then you can make a new form element. What all that you needs to be want to trigger your input events in that particular component. So by moving the form handling responsibilities to its own, what we need to do? We need to simplify the header code, and we can call a parent of a header when the user submits the form. So that is the best thing you can do when you look on code optimization. So we can call the search form and create a new component. So the new component is a stateful component, as well as it needs to hold the value of the search input. Whatever it changes, it needs to be tracked. That component needs to be tracked. So for that, what we need to do? I'm just creating a search form, extends React component, constructor. I'm just making this dot state search text to be empty. After that, I'm ready I have a HTML for my form return header component. So all the we can grab that from our header component, and then I'm just returning it from our search form render function. So class search form is now extending the React component inside the render. I'm just making the search visible as this dot props, which means it will derive from that search visible that we have already created. And then search class is that search input. If search visible is true, means it will push that active, otherwise it will not push. So inside that I'm just going to create a form, type search, class name search classes dot join. So it will needs to append, this is my placeholder and this is my form. So now what I have done, we have moved some code from header component to search form. So now what we are going to do, we are going to update its render method to incorporate that particular search form. How we can do that? So class header extends React component. So here render inside my return method, div class header, menu icon, dash top bottom circle. So span class name little, I have this dot props dot title inside of the class name and just closing that. Adding on click handler to call a show search button. So inside the div, I have show search button. If I click on that button, that function will automatically call and it will bind all the methods in that icon. So we have lost the style on our input field. We no longer have a search visible stage in our new component, so we can't use that. So for that, what we can do, we can cross a props from our header components, and then we need to tell the new component which we have created. What we have created, we have created a search form to render the input as visible. And also we can define that search visible props using props type, and then update the render function to use the new prop value to show or hide the particular search input. We also set a default value for the visibility of the field to get false, since our header shows or hide it very nicely. So these are the things we need to do that we have done already. So for that, in order to make that search visible props, just like apart from that, we don't have style, right? So I need to make use prop types, and then I need to update my render function to use the new prop value to show or hide the input field. So for that, I'm just having a search form, and inside I have used the prop types. So true or false, right? So I'm just using prop types bool. So this is the boolean. Search visible, it has made boolean. So inside the default props, I have set as false. So initially it should not show. In case if you forgot to include the prop type in your package, so you can just add the script in your HTML file. So that also should be fine. Finally, we can pass the search visible state value from header as a prop to a search form. Class header extends React component. Inside that particular render, same thing, whatever we have seen, header, menu icon, dashboard, circle. Inside span, I have passed as props as title. This is the search form which I have created before. Inside that, I have only props title. I have said, if it's search form, it will go there. Initially, I have set as false. So inside the search visible, it will be initially false. After, I'm just adding an on-click handler to show search button. So this show on click, this show search will go here. 1 minute. So it will go here and then it will make that particular thing visible. Now I'm just having our own style back on the input element. So we can add a functionality for the user types in the search bar, and then we can capture the value from the search field. What we need to do to capture the value. We can achieve this workflow by attaching onChange prop to the input element and passing it a function to call every time the input element is getting updated. Class search form extends React component. I need to update the value whenever the user enters. So I have a method called update search input constant value e dot target value this dot set state. Inside that search text, I have a value initially which I have passed from the previous one. So render if search visible means I'm just making that set state, and search class if search visible I'm just pushing that inside the search class, and I'm returning input search class name whatever I'm just typing in the text field. I'm just joining to that. On the onChange, I have calling the update search input method to bind. I have a placeholder called search. So in say whatever in the form whatever I have typing, it will get appended and then it will update immediately. It will trigger the event. When we typed in the field, the update search input function will be called. We will keep track of the value of a form by updating the particular state. In update search input function, we can call that directly using this dot set state to update our state of a component, or else the value will be held on the event object target as event dot target dot value. The particular value will get now stored in our event. So class search form extends React component. What? So in the update search input, I'm just having already we have shown event value needs to hold the event object target. So the event object target gets called by e dot target dot value, which I have stored in val. This dot set state, which is my search text, I have a value in that. So this is all about the input types and the user interaction events. So these are the samples I have shown you. You can make use of this code and build on your own. So at the end of the session, I will run you one of the example which I have shown you for this user interaction. So next would be like controlled and uncontrolled events. So what is that controlled and uncontrolled? Like we are creating uncontrolled, we are not setting the value of the input event. We can't provide any validation or post processing on input text as it stands right now. If we want to validate the field or manipulate the value of the input component, we will have to create what is called control component, which really means to pass using the value of props that is called. And also the control component will have a render function as a default that would be look like this. So this is like controlled component or control element. So class search form extends React component. I have a render here, right? So these are the controlled components. Input type search value this dot search text class name search input classes on change. I'm just updating the search input field and I am binding that. I have a placeholder for search in the search form. As of now, we have no way to actually submit the form. So our users can't really search. So that is we cannot search really. What we can do, we can capture the form submission by using on submit prop on the form element. So that is what we can do. And also we can update the render function to reflect the changes whatever we have made. So class search form extends React component. So submit form will be the our event. I'm just making as a prevent default. So inside the render, I have a search visible that is set to be this dot props. Let search classes be search input. If search is visible means you can push that search class to active, or else you can return on submit this dot submit form dot bind this. In the input field, you can type a search and then you can join that class name and update your input field. That is the placeholder we have used. And here we have immediately called prevent default on the submit form function. You can see here prevent default is nothing but here in the submit bar the prevent default event I have. What is that? I will explain here. So this stops the browser from bubbling the event tab, which would cause the default behavior of an entire page to reload. The default function when a browser submits a form. Now, when we type into an input field and press a enter, the submit function get called with that particular event object. So we can submit the form, but what we need to do actually, so for demonstration purpose, you can pass the search text from the parent to child or vice versa. You can do that. But in real, if you create a component like this, what we how need to search the header. So search component certainly does not do what it is searching. For that, we have to pass the responsibility up the chain. We need to use the callback strategy to make it happens actually. In order to pass the search functionality up the chain, our search function will need to accept a prop function to call when the form get actually submitted. So let's define a prop we call on submit that we can pass to our search component. So we are good developers actually. We will also add a default prop value and prop type for this on submit function. Since we want to make sure on submit is defined. So we will set the on submit prop to be required as a actual props which is happening around. This sub search form extends its React component. I'm just making that props type function to get required inside that. So the search visible I have made as a boolean. Inside the search form I have made the default props get on submit and search visible is I have made it as false. When the form is get eventually submitted, we can call this function directly from the props. Since we are keep tracking of a search text in our state, we can call the function with the search text value in the state so that on submit function will only gets a value that does not needs to deal with that particular event. When the form gets submitted, we can call the function from the props. That is what it is overall uh, concept or explanation of this particular line. So you can see here, in order to pass the search functionality, the search form will accept the prop function. In order to submit, on submit, you need to pass our search form component. And in order to make a default prop value and prop type, you need to use on submit function. So we will make sure onSubmit is defined, will set onSubmit prompt to required a prompt. Search form also extend the React component, and I have prop types search visible prop types dot bool, and for that particular search visible I'm just making the default props to be false. When the form gets submitted, we can call this function directly from the props. Since we are keep on tracking in our state, we can call the function with the search text value in the state. So onSubmit function only gets the value, does not needs to deal with the particular event. So class search form extends React component submit form. I am just passing the event. So it will prevent the form reloading the entire page. Event dot prevent default. So that would be the callback with the search value. This dot props dot on submit, what it will do, it will update your state with the search text. Now when the user press enter, we can call this on submit function passed in the props by our header component. So let's add a on submit props to the search form in the header component. You can add. So class header extends React component. In the render, I'm just returning div class name header menu icon dash top dash bottom. And also inside the spam, I'm just making the title. So search form, I'm just making that search visible by this dot state dot search visible, and I will make on submit. I'm just making that props dot on search. Adding on click handler to call the show search button. Div on click this dot show search dot but bind of this class name search icon. These are the things we need to repeat because you have a search comp from the component we can use and then reuse across our app. So I'm just reusing those components, but actually anything yet you can implement the search. So to implement search in your own component, what you needs to do. So we'll want to pass up the search responsibility one more level from our header component to a container component we'll call panel. First thing is like we'll implement the same pattern of passing a callback to parent component within the child component from panel to the header component. So that is the first thing of implementing our search. Next thing on the header component, you need to update the prop types and then you can define a props called on search. So that is the second thing you can do. This header will extend the React component. You have the header props type. You can use a function. So inside my header props, I can use a function. So in my panel component, I have a constructor. Inside that constructor, I have a state activities data. In render, I'm making this state. So this would be like destructing. Uh, Header title github activity class content activity. What I'm doing, I'm just making that id to get one by one. So in case in any other case, here I'm just using the map function to get the id one by one, whatever is coming new to the github. In our case, a panel component is essentially a copy of our content component. So make sure you can include the activity item component in our page as well as. Also, don't forget to include moment.js in your file so that it will be like activity item to our format dates as well as. So if you forgot those prop types, please add your script tag in the place, and it would be our which virtual tree looks like actually. Panel header, and here it is a search form. So, and I'm just closing the header. When the search form is updated, it will pass along with awareness of search input changes to its parent and its header when it will pass along upwards to the panel component. This method is very common in React apps and it provides a good set of functional isolation for our particular component. Back in our panel component, we will pass a function to a header as and search props on that particular header we have. So whatever we are saying here is that when the search form has been submitted, we want to search form to call back to the header component that which will then call the panel component to handle the particular search. So these are the complex things we have. First, the search form needs to be updated. After that, it will pass a search input change to the header component, that is the parent, and then it will pass upwards to the panel component. And then back in the panel component, we will pass a function to that header component. So when the form has submitted, we want the search form to call back to the header component, which will then call the panel to handle the search. Since the header component does not control the content listing, the panel component does. We have to pass the responsibility one more level up what we are defining here actually. So in order to actually handle the searching, we will need to pass on search function to the particular header component. So let's define on search function in our panel and then pass that to the header props in the render function. So class panel extends React component. Constructor super inside that I have a state activities as data. Handle search, I have a handle search here, so that is the handle I'm just making. And inside the render const activities, this dot state, the thing which I have shown you before, everything it's rendering, and I'm just returning the header of my GitHub activity. This dot handle change dot bind this, I'm just binding the header component, and I'm just making the class content, and with the help of that map function, I'm just making activity 1, activity 2, activity 3, like that. I'm generating a unique key and my appending my values through that. So we add a handle search function and pass that to the header. Now when the user types in the search box the handle search function on our panel component will be now get called. So let's update our handle search method to do actually searching. Class panel extends React component. Inside handle search, I am just resetting the data if the search value is empty. If val equal to empty means I will set my state data to data which is coming from the child component. Else what I will do for that activity, I will set my state and constant filter. I'm just filtering my activity. If it is a dot actor, or it will it a dot actor dot match, it will get matched, and then it will based on the value it get passed, which means we have set some state, right? So based on that it will make a match and then it will return. All the activities dot filter function does is run the function pass for every element and then filter out the values that return falsy values, keeping the ones that return truly ones. Our search function simply looks for the match on the GitHub's actor.login to see that rejects max the value. With handle search function updater, our search component now gets complete. So it is now over. So now this is all about the controlled and uncontrolled. Now let's discuss about style. So no application is complete without style. That we have all known already. So everything what we want is style. So how that style is designed actually you can see. So we will look at different methods we can use to style our components from traditional CSS to inline styling. Throughout this point, we haven't touched the styling of our component beyond attaching cascading style sheet classes name to our component. So let's look at few of the different ways we can style our component. So we have inline styling, cascading styling, and styling libraries. So let's see one by one. What is CSS? So using CSS, we can style our web application is practice already familiar with those and all who used HTML5 and you will be familiar with CSS. But the thing is like how to use CSS in React. That is what we are going to see. If we ever written a web application before, you most likely have used or written the CSS. So things are normal, but way of usage is now going to get differ here. So in short, CSS is a way for us to add style to our DOM component outside of our actual markup itself. So using CSS along React is not novel. So we will use CSS in React just like we use CSS when not using that React. So that is the novel. So we will assign IDs class to a component and use CSS selector to those element on the page, and then we will handle those styling in the browser. Other these all things are same. So now I'm just going to add the style to my header component and let's see how it is working actually. So let's say we wanted to turn the header color orange with CSS. So how we can do that? So we can easily handle this by adding style sheet to our page and targeting the CSS class of dot header in the CSS class. So now let's recall the render function of our header component. Currently how it is look like. Class header extends React component. So render, I'm just returning class name, header, menu icon, dash top, bottom, circle. So these are the things, same thing, title, search, everything. So now we can target the header by defining a styles dot header class in regular file. So as usual, we need to make sure link to be included in that CSS class in our HTML file. Suppose we are define our style in a file called styles.css in the same directory as the HTML file. That link should be like this. Link, this is my relation, that is a style sheet. Type is text.css. href, what is the ref? File name is styles.css. This is the file name you need to mention in the href. So let's fill in style for header class names. So dot demo dot notification dot header. My background color would be RGBA 251 202 43 1. And demo notification header search icon for header, so you can write your class name like this. So everything for this all these classes, this would be my color. So this is like a separate css file I have. So if you have a separate css file, then this should be the link you need to export in that particular css file, and then you can use. So everything will get reflected on that particular file. So demo notification frame, header menu dash bottom dash top, header menu icon, circle, for everything this should be my background color. So one most common complaints about css in first place is like it future it cascading itself. So the way css work, that it cascade hence parent style to its children. So the most common cause for bug is classes. It have common names and it is easy to overwrite your class style for non-specific classes. So these are the most common bugs it have. So using our example, the class name of dot header, it is that is not very specific. And not only could the page itself have a header, but content box on the particular page might articles, even ads. So we also place on a page that might have class name of a dot header. So one way we can avoid this problem uh, to use like something like css module to define custom very unique css class name for us. So that is the one thing we can do. There nothing magical about css module other than force, or else you can define a custom css class name for us, so we can work with this less unique names. And also we will look into the css module bit later in our workflow. The React provides not so new methods for avoiding this problem. What we need to do, entire allow defining our styles inline along with our JSX only. So inline styles. Adding styles to our actual component not only allow to define style inside our component, but also dynamically define styles based on different states of our props. So like what it actually mean, like react, it gives a new way to define that. Let's take a header component one more time, and instead of using css class to define the style, we can move that into that. Defining inside component is very easy using that particular style props. All DOM element inside that React will accept a style property, so which is expected to be object and camel case keys defining style name and values which map to their value. So that all same. For example, to add a color style to a div element in JSX, so that might be look like this: div style color blue. So this would be the text color blue. So now we need to notice we can define style with two braces surrounding it. This is the two braces surrounding that. As we are passing a JavaScript object within a template tag, the inner brace will be our JS object and outer would be the template tag. So this you need to be very careful, because a DOM inside React will accept the style property that would be an object with a camel case. And in order to add a color to that, your JSX would be look like this. So div, so this is the element I have in React. So style double braces color. As we are passing JavaScript object within the template, inner brace that is for the JS object and outer should be the template. So that's why we are adding two braces while defining a CSS as a inline style. So that is more important thing you need to keep in mind while creating inline brace, and this quotation is must. And also the style is must. Style double bracket, this would be the attribute and this would be the value for that thing. Another example possible to clear, you can pass a JavaScript. We can pass a JavaScript object defined outside JSX. Render const div style. Color blue. I'm just returning div style inside that. So the text will have the color blue of the div. So in any case, as these JS defined styles, so we can't use just CSS style name. So the background color would be invalid. Your background color would be invalid in JavaScript. So what we needs to do, so inside that, in many cases the JS is defined, we can't use any of a style name in a background color, that would be totally invalid. Instead of that, React requires camel case. So camel case is writing compound words sorry, using capital letter for every word. The capital letter would be except the first word, like this is the camel case. Background color C would be caps and linear gradient G would be caps. To update a header component to use the style, instead of depending on CSS class definition, we can add the class name prop along with that style prop. So this is the particular thing. Class header react dot components. So background color, I have RGBA. I'm just wrapping the style inside my render. Constant little style, I have a color. So constant menu color, this is my background color. So in returning that, I have a wrapper style, menu con dash top dash bottom circle. So these are the things I'm just returning, and this would be my search input. So everything I have copying from that. So next would be styling libraries. So the React community is pretty vibrant place, which is one of the reasons fantastic libraries work with. So there are lots of styling libraries we can use to build our styles, such as Radium or Labs. So most of those libraries are based on workflows defined by React developers through working with React. So this Radium allows us to define common style outside of the React component itself. Its auto vendor prefix supports media queries like who were active, and it also simplifies the inline styling a kind of lot more. So we won't dive into Radium into this post as it more outside the scope of this series, but knowing other libraries are good aware of extending the definitions of our inline style. So basically, like now we want to know a style of a component, so that would be a good knowledge and also without any trouble. So in order to know the styling libraries, this is good to know. So these are the summary of our today's session. We have discussed about user interaction, input events, what are control versus uncontrolled elements, styles, and styling libraries. I'm just closing this theory part here. I will share my screen for the practical demo for this today's session. So before that, I will start my server ready, my app 3 yarn start. Okay. So I will get my documents where I have my program. local in the desktop. So it would be inside React. Where is that? React. Yeah. So it would be like 6th or 7. Okay. And also I just wanted to open my project as well as inside SRC. So I don't want. So whatever editor you want, you can use. I'm just using the Notepad++. So this is my first interaction, which is like how to create search box. That is the only example. Yeah, this is only example today I have, because we most probably we have been discussing about these topics right today. That would be enough for today. If I make you heavy in particular session, then you may get confused. So let's change everywhere header. Here I need to remove and then I need to change that to header. Just note the points whatever I'm doing. I'm just importing that everywhere. Yeah, it is now starting the development server. Starting. So it will start. Once start, we will. So yeah, this is our app. Localhost 3000. Let's wait for the browser to get start. It is getting slow. So before that, I will explain the program. It will come. So okay. So initially, I'm just making a search visible to false. The program is like it will just give you the search field, whatever it will get append because of this, and you have a source search. I have bind that method here. I'm just making that set state to true with the help of false. So this is a simple program for your click event. So if it is run me, you will get the search box, and there you can type whatever you want in your from the browser. So 1 minute, it is keep. Okay, it's throwing errors like export app. I have mentioned right. Only one export should be there. If I save, yeah, it is compiled. So now you will have, see, this is the placeholder. So it is keep on going. Control delete. So this is all about the user event, which is make you clickable in the search. So if you want, you can also make a CSS to the particular div, or class, whichever you want, as an inline css style. For that, you in the html files you need to import a certain libraries or class, whichever I have already discussed in the presentation. So inline css also you need to do. So if you browse, you will get that line of the script tag for that particular css. If not, I will show you in maybe in the upcoming session how to use inline css without updating, so that I will show you. So this is all about today's session. So if you have any queries, please write to info@uplatz.com. So see you all on my next session.